In this case, Weaver's Cove, when they first came in, applied for both a Category B or formal activity under the state's jurisdiction under the Coastal Management Program, as well as a federal consistency review. According to the manual that we have on federal consistency, and this manual, I should just point out also, had been passed over to NOAA, reviewed and approved and adopted by NOAA as our federal consistency manual, so we weren't following a process that hadn't been through the federal review for those regulations. Outline that the process essentially follows a parallel path when we're both doing federal consistency and a Category B review. In a Category B review, our program sets out that there are prerequisites before we can even accept an application in certain categories of applications. So the regulations prohibit the staff from actually accepting an application unless those pieces of information are in it. In this case, there were 3 pieces of information that were deemed to be prerequisites and critical to the application. The first was the fact that the plans had to be stamped by a registered Rhode Island engineer. The plans that we received were not stamped by a Rhode Island PE. They were, in fact, stamped by an out-of-state person. The second piece of...
I apologize for interrupting, but that sounds like the discussion of the legal complications that may or may have been involved in the court case.
It's also
and your expertise, because I've known you forever, is the person who really knows the dynamics of our coastal environment. And I think that's what we really want to, if possible, to hear you talk about what this plan means as you see it to the coastal community and to the entire state of Rhode Island. I don't mean to cut you off. I see you have prepared text. But I guess I would ask you to get into that area, which is certainly the expertise that I have come to rely on from you, not so much what did or did not get stamped at a given point, which I know you do properly, but by the same token, we're here on a larger mission, I guess.
Okay, Senator. There are a number of issues, obviously, that are associated with a project of this magnitude and of this particular type of product. Rhode Island, unlike what you hear in the popular press, was the first state to actually zone the state's waters. Massachusetts has been given a lot of popular press as being the first state in the nation to develop an ocean plan. Rhode Island did it 26 years ago. The water zoning actually forms a basis for delegating and setting out certain water uses and the appropriate uses within those waters. And that would have been sort of part of the first basis had we been able to review the entire project to look at this, because there are water types, for instance, that are delegated and assigned to such things as tourism-oriented waters. They're assigned to high recreational boating waters, which these tankers not only would pass through, but also affect with their security zones. And the security zones, as I'm sure you're well aware, are quite extensive as these tankers pass up and down the bay. The dredging project itself within Rhode Island, at the initial start, was a small-scale project of about 18,000 cubic yards, and it was originally designed as a maintenance dredge. They were going essentially to dredge it down to its original configuration and fairly wide. They subsequently changed that to narrow up the dredging and get some overdraft dredging, that is to dredge actually deeper than what the authorized depth is, so that they could get tanker passage up there. They had proposed to do year-round dredging, no environmental windows, which we didn't even allow the federal government to do when they went through and did the Providence Harbor project, which there was a valid navigational interest for the state in order to get its heating oil and other oil products up and down the channel here. The Corps did adhere to environmental windows, and as a result, it dragged the project out to 18 months. So one of the concerns, obviously, is that there were environmental windows that we wanted to see in place on the project. And I know that there are federal agencies and other state agencies that are now insisting on those environmental windows also, but that is certainly critical to this project, that it be done in a proper fashion if the dredging occurs. The original project that came into us actually proposed upland disposal in Massachusetts. So there would be just a short jaunt up the bay to the Massachusetts line to dispose of the material in an upland configuration. At the time, we did not know when we were reviewing this whether there would be contaminated sediments or not. And so there was a concern, obviously, with the contamination levels within the sediments. As it turns out now, there are contamination levels within the Fall River area that are of particular concern. The proposed change that they made during the process, which the court found was not a substantial change, is they switched from an upland location disposal to an in-water disposal off Block Island. So now they're going to dredge and transport that material down through those waters into and dispose off of Block Island. There are Army Corps standards that will prevent them from disposing of contaminated material there. But it is still a concern because of just the marine traffic associated with barges. Those barges going through, I don't know if anybody's familiar with an operation, but there's usually a tug and a dredge scow. There can be up to 600 to 800 feet of line, I think, anyhow, between the barge and the tug. When we were doing the dredging with the Providence Harbor, there was a recreational boat that actually got in between the two and did severe damage to the boat. So if you're sending those barges and scows down through Newport area during the height of the season, when you've got day sailors out there, you've got children's sailings programs out there, there's a number of recreational boating interests in that area, that would have been a very major concern to us for the dredging operations at the time. The proposed project right now that's under review and going through an EIS process proposes to have, as you're well aware, an offshore terminal and then cryogenically transport that material to the Fall River Terminal. There is a lot of concern on the resource agencies about the transportation of that cryogenic material through the sediment in those areas and what that means for the surrounding environment. As far as we can determine, there hasn't been a record of this in terms of marine waters and usage for this particular purpose. Most of the time what you see for the deep water ports, such as the ones off of Massachusetts, is the ships that are actually docking at those have what they call regasification capability. So the ships actually regasify and then transport or pump through the line natural gas, not liquid cryogenic material. So there are a lot of issues. There's dredging that is associated with the new lines now, so it will increase the dredge footprint within contaminated material. There is as I said, the security zones. We're not able to look at this point the timing of those traffic and transits when they could be done, for instance, in a safer fashion, in a less disruptive fashion. As you're probably well aware, you send a tanker up there through a Saturday morning, you're going to have problems with bridge crossings and whatnot. So there's a host of issues that we wanted to explore and look at in terms of impacts that unfortunately we were shut down by the courts on that decision from exercising that and review.
Thank you very much. I think it's a particular concern of all of us here. We have established the Management Council, and your position in that council of long standing to manage for the benefit of the people of the state, this great resource that we have, and that you are in any fashion shut out of a discussion with regard to it is just extraordinarily distressing, especially because I think I and many of the people here on this commission have relied on you in the past for discussions about and making the future of that bay and making sure that it was there and preserved for all the people in our community.